The Vreth did not have a word for gentle. They had words for restrained, words for controlled, words for not yet killing. But gentle, that soft, deliberate tenderness that required nothing in return, that concept had never evolved in their language because it had never evolved in their nature. Corax knew this better than anyone. He stood 7 feet tall, covered in overlapping plates of dark gray chitin that had stopped 4 plasma rounds in the Battle of Meridian Pass. His claws had carved through reinforced hull plating. His species, the Vreth, had been classified by the Galactic Council as Tier 3 predators, which meant that in any diplomatic setting, he was required to wear a dampening collar, file a behavioral report every 30 days, and remain at least 10 meters from any species classified as prey-adjacent. Humans were prey-adjacent. Corax had laughed when he first read that designation, a short, clicking sound that made the Galactic Council clerk faint. He had stopped laughing the day his cubs were enrolled at the Interspecies Academy on Station Varan 9. The academy had been his mate Severa's idea. She was smarter than him, not faster, not stronger, but she understood the galaxy in ways he was still learning. Our cubs need to know more than hunting, she had told him, her neck frills flat with quiet certainty. They need to know how to live in it. So Corax had agreed. He had signed the forms, worn the diplomatic collar, attended the orientation meeting where a self-free administrator had sweated visibly every time he shifted in his seat. He had done everything correctly. But today, when the academy released the cubs early due to a maintenance alert, no one had notified him. He arrived at the academy gate to collect Vranik and Sela and found the lobby empty. A junior staff member, a young Talani with wide optical clusters, pointed him toward the outer courtyard with a shaking appendage. They are outside, with the others. Corax moved through the corridor without another word. He smelled them before he saw them. His cubs, 4 years old, barely past their first molt, chitin still soft enough to dent, were in the far corner of the courtyard. He could hear Vranik's high clicking and Sela's lower, rumbling gurgle, the sounds they made when they were excited about something. Then he heard a third sound. Laughter. Human laughter. That strange, breathy, unguarded vocalization that always confused him. Too loud. Too open. Like a creature that had never learned to be afraid of being heard. He rounded the corner. Vranik and Sela were crouched on the ground, their small bodies hunched forward in the posture his species used when intensely focused on something small and important. Between them, sitting cross-legged on the courtyard floor with complete disregard for the 2 predator cubs flanking her, was a human child. She was perhaps 6 years old, small even by human standards. She had dark brown hair pulled into 2 uneven sections on either side of her head and a uniform that had grass stains on both knees. In her lap was a small metal puzzle. Interlocking rings, the kind sold in the station's market district. She was showing his cubs how to solve it. No, like this, see? You turn it this way first, then the other ring slides, she was saying, guiding Sela's small claw with 2 fingers. Sela's claw was bigger than the girl's entire hand. Sela clicked with concentration and twisted the ring. It slid. Both cubs made the sharp, high chirp that meant surprised delight, a sound Corax had not heard from them since they were barely hatched. The girl laughed again. You got it. I told you. Vranik immediately grabbed for the puzzle, and the girl pulled it back with a look of absolute authority. Wait your turn. Your sister just went. Vranik, who had once made a Galactic Council mediator step behind a desk by simply turning to look at him, sat back and waited. Corax stood very still. He did not announce himself. He did not know why. Something in the scene made him reluctant to disturb it, some instinct he could not name pressing against his ribs like a slow pressure. He watched his daughter guide a small metal ring through a puzzle with her tongue between her teeth in concentration. He watched his son wait, impatiently but obediently, because a human child half his size had told him to. He watched the girl treat his cubs the way she might treat any other children, with the unconscious, unsentimental fairness of someone who had not yet learned to categorize the world by danger. She had no idea what they were. Or perhaps she did, and simply did not care. After another minute, Corax stepped forward. His footfall was heavy. He had never learned to move quietly when he wasn't hunting, and the sound of his approach made the girl look up. She saw him. 7 feet. Dark chitin. Claws that had carved through hull plating. Eyes that reflected light in the low spectrum range that most prey animals instinctively recognized as wrong. The girl looked at him for a moment. Then she looked at his cubs. Then she looked back at him and said, "Are these yours?" Korik stopped. "Yes. They're really good at puzzles," she said, with the tone of someone delivering a sincere compliment. "Sela figured out the third ring way faster than my cousin did, and he's 8. Vranek made a smug click. Sela tried to look modest and failed. Korik looked at his cubs. They were watching him with the particular stillness of children who were not sure if they were in trouble. He looked back at the girl. "You are not afraid." She considered this with the seriousness that small children sometimes apply to strange questions. "Of what?" He gestured, briefly, at himself, at the obvious entirety of himself. "Oh." She seemed to think about it. "My dad says being afraid of something before you know if it's mean is just wasting energy." She paused. "Are you mean?" "I have been," he said honestly. She nodded slowly. "My cousin is mean sometimes too." But Sela waited for her turn, so she held out the puzzle to Vranek, who took it with exaggerated care. Korik settled onto the courtyard bench. It creaked dangerously beneath him, and watched. He watched Vranek struggle with the fourth ring and refuse, twice. The girls offered to help, because pride was already calcifying in him young. He watched Sela find a small stone near the bench and present it to the girl with the gravity of a formal gift, and he watched the girl accept it with equal gravity, examining it and saying it was a good one. He watched his cubs do something he had not been able to teach them in 4 years of careful parenting. He watched them simply be with someone. No threat assessment. No dominance positioning. No careful reading of another creature's posture for signs of aggression. Just 2 young Vreth and a human child sitting in a courtyard solving a metal puzzle and arguing about whose turn it was. When the academy staff member finally appeared at the courtyard entrance, looking relieved and slightly panicked in equal measure, the girl scrambled to her feet and dusted off her knees. "I have to go," she announced. She looked at Vranek and Sela. "You can keep practicing. The hard part is the 5th ring, but if you do the 3rd one backward first it works." Vranek clicked acknowledgement. Sela made the soft sound that meant come back soon. The girl looked up at Korik one final time. He expected the hesitation that usually came, the moment when even adults recalibrated, reminded themselves of what he was. Instead, she said, "Your kids are nice." Then she was gone. Korik sat with his cubs in the empty courtyard. Sela climbed onto the bench beside him, which she was technically too old for now and did anyway. Vranek sat at his feet and worked the puzzle with focused, furious determination. After a while, Vranek said, without looking up, "She wasn't scared of us." "No," Korik agreed. "Why?" Korik thought about his mate's words. About forms and collars and orientation meetings. About a galaxy that had spent 10,000 years building careful walls between what was dangerous and what was safe, and a 6-year-old human who had simply sat down in the gap and started handing out puzzles. "Because she decided what you were before she decided what you looked like," he said finally. Vranek clicked, low and thoughtful. Sela pressed her small head against his arm. The 5th ring, Korik thought, watching his son work. Backward through the 3rd. He had never considered that there were problems in this galaxy that worked that way. He was beginning to think there were more of them than he had understood.